people are sick of big government and big government in every aspect of our lives. It's growing to this massive organisation that just loves doing business with itself and taking freedoms away from us every single day, and that's what drives me. I want to reverse that and get government out of our lives.
Jim Willmott, how are you, sir?
Good, Ben.
Mate, thank you very much for coming down. Cheers for heading over.
Yeah, no worries.
We'll get it off right with a beer.
Mm.
So, I think the best way to jump into this one is probably just going to be feet first.
Yep.
Because you've got so much background already.
Yep.
And now you're into this whole new section of a fight where you probably should be just chilling out with a beer some afternoons. And you're taking on a whole nother challenge. So why don't you give us a bit of a rundown as to you, and we can unpick everything from that, because I was looking at how do I even do an intro with this? Like, you got that much going on, and there's so much to unpick with this. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, and we'll just hit the ground running.
Well, mate, I actually I'm from Perth originally, but moved over to Queensland. Spent most of my life here. I was quite young when we moved over, and we settled in southeast Queensland, and we've been attached to the rural side of things and rural and regional Queensland for quite a long time. We've had cattle and basically beef farms all my life, and my parents, my step dad still does. So, look, I went to college. Still wanted to stick within the agricultural industry. Got involved. Went out west, right out west, with natural resources and mines, and we were all about, I guess, biosecurity and invasive species, like reacting to mice plagues, locust plagues, rats plagues. Yeah. And went right into the Simpson Desert doing Khaleesi virus releases. So there was some good forward driving.
Yes.
Really cut my teeth out there. So it was
I don't doubt it.
In an old 75 cruiser, mate, departmental cruiser. So we put it through its paces, and I learned a lot.
How far back was that?
That was back in the mid-90s up to the early 2000s.
Okay, yeah, so you're not ripping around with MAXTRAX and recovery gear everywhere.
I wish I did.
Yeah.
Got quite like a bog quite a few times out there. And look, from there, moved throughout central Queensland, and then moved down to Brisbane, got a senior position in the public service. I did that for 4 or 5 years, and then, moved home. I helped my family out. One of my parents had cancer. And, then moved down to, actually, we talked about it before, Lismore. Spent 4 or 5 years down there working with local and state governments, and again in that policy, biosecurity type role.
Yeah. And
then moved back up here, got a farm out the South Burnett, mate, beef farm again.
Yeah.
I've been in, what I really want to, I guess, stick up for people's rights, fundamental rights, and a lot of that's about property rights.
Yeah.
And their freedoms. So I got involved in a few organisations, Green Shirts, back about 7 or 8 years ago, Property Rights Australia. I've been chair of Property Rights Australia for a number of years now.
Yep.
And also done a lot of volunteering, Rural Fire Brigade type stuff, but also recently, went into politics. Never really wanted to be a politician.
Yep.
But it's really drawn me because I could see the Australia that I grew up with as a kid and through my working career, it's changing, Ben. Yeah. And I think we're on the downward spiral, mate.
I don't think many people are going to argue about that.
Yep, so I really wanted to play my part in trying to stop that and reverse that.
Yeah.
And that's why, I'm running as a lead Senate candidate for the Libertarians in Queensland.
Yep.
And, very passionate about it and trying to correct that spiral and get us on the right track. And really, like, it was interesting how we were talking before about the impacts of lockouts of land, the impacts on owning private property, running a business. Yeah. I just think people, the main thing I'm hearing going around, and I go around Queensland quite a lot, is, mate, people are sick of big government and big government in every aspect of our lives. It's growing to this massive organisation that just loves doing business with itself and taking freedoms away from us every single day, and that's what drives me. I want to reverse that and get government out of our lives.
Yeah. Kerry Packer said it best. He's like, instead of keep writing this legislation, what about for every new bit you do, you get rid of one?
Well, you imagine putting all the legislation that's in existing now.
Yeah.
How many millions of pages would it be?
Oh, I wouldn't have a clue. It'd be a forest worth.
It would be like it's just. And I've said this before. Like for me, even just producing beef. Like there's 77 bits of different legislations and codes of practice for me to roll one beast out the gate.
Wow. That's over the course of its life from where you start to where you sell it.
All your
kind of
HR, your IR, your environmental stuff, or your compliance, your soil conservation, your pesticide, your livestock protection, production insurance. It goes on and on and on.
Good Lord. 70 what?
77.
77.
My mate's a grain farmer down the road, 85 bits of legislation, and that's only state and local government. That's not federal government. So you can see
nuts.
Yeah, you can see Australia is drowning under a sea of bureaucratic red and green tape, and that's why I don't know if you can feel it. People can feel it like it's stifling our lives.
Yeah.
And every which way we turn, there's another government regulation, another government like compliance or sheet you've got to fill out, or you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. What car you can drive, what you can say, what you can think.
Yeah, it's. Oh, God, there's so much in just that.
Yeah.
I think there's certain parts of things to just hit a couple of them, like, you know, well, when we come up driving, it was you got your learners for 6 months.
Yep.
You had your, what did we have our Ps for? 3 years? Yep. Just straight Ps, 3 years. Yep. None of the different colours, none of the restrictions, and you either had a manual or an auto, I guess and then on manual you can drive both. The fact that they opened it up to a little more rigorous, accounting of the hours these kids are doing, with the power that some of these cars have got, probably not a bad idea. There's not a chance in hell I would have done the amount of hours of what they're talking about now. I think I did two paid lessons. We did one, and then old mate was like, "Yeah, no, you'll be sweet. We'll do an hour before you do your test, and I'll make sure you pass." Done. So there's certain things that from a point of view of safety in that regard, my old man used to say, like, when you get behind the wheel, it's like getting around with a loaded handgun. You don't respect it, you're going to kill someone or yourself or both.
Dangerous.
So yeah, there's definitely certain things where I'm like, that's a good best practice.
Yep.
Bit of legislation or bit of critiquing of an existing. That's the thing, critiquing an existing rule.
Yep.
Not just loading it up with more and more shit. But I mean the recreation side for the forest, like the land, the 77 bits for a cow.
Yep.
Like, I mean, that blows my mind. Like, who sits there and comes up with this shit?
Well, and that's it. Every bit of legislation adds cost.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like...
When you say cost, you mean like something you've got to pay for that the government then feeds off?
That's right, because the larger the bureaucracy and the larger amount of red and green tape there is, the more bureaucrats you need to manage that.
Yep.
And manage that compliance. And it comes to, look, I'm getting, say, at the moment, $4 a kilo when I sell a steer off my farm at the sale yards through the feedlot. But you can buy a steak in a restaurant and you pay up to $150, $180 a kilo.
Yeah.
So just look at the difference and each node that goes through production, with your arbitrage, your marketing, your transport, they've all got legislation and bureaucracy on them as well.
Yeah.
And so it just adds to the cost of living. And I often say to people, we're in a cost of living crisis. We are. Just look at things are going up. It's expensive to do business. It's expensive, the staples, your food, your fuel. It's because we've got too much government. So the government is so large and it takes so much money to run That's where all our taxes go, mate. Where we should have less tax and more money in your pocket, and that's what I'm about. That's what the Libertarians about: simplifying things.
Yeah.
And making it simple so we don't get weighed down, and it puts more responsibility back on the individual and your family.
Because, like, wasn't GST supposed to get rid of everything? It was that was going to be the one tax.
But it stayed, didn't it? All
Well, everything else stayed as well, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But then it was like it was on, I think the original pitch was on non-necessities.
Yep.
And it was like, I remember the first bit of uproar was the women's, like, lady products. They're like, how is that not a necessity? And yet it was on that.
That's right.
It's like every step of the way from way back, and I mean, I'm sure it was before, but that's about as early as I kind of heard things and paid a little bit of attention. From that through to, this electrical bill discount.
Yep.
That didn't happen, or it happened, but we were going to get $150 off, but it went up by 300, so it was kind of like even, whatever.
That's right.
How does, in Australia, so we had Pauline Hanson on, and she explained a couple of bits and pieces about we don't work like America in the fact that someone from outside a major party can't step in and run for the big job. So, because who were we talking about? It was Mark Boris we were talking about. He was like the rich, because he did the Apprentice Australia.
Yep.
And, he's got his own show now, and he's, drawing a lot of different attention to a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. He what would it take for someone like that to turn around at that level with that ungodly amount of money to literally go, we're going to fix some stuff at that upper crust level where people have no choice but to listen?
Yep.
There's nothing we can do in Australia like that, is there? We've literally got to rally and build the troops effectively.
We do. So what's happening now, you've got two major parties.
Yeah.
And there is some differences, but there's a lot of similarities. It's sometimes with their decisions, it's hard to tell them apart.
Yeah.
And then you've got the United Nations, and you see a lot of stuff and direction coming down from the United Nations that goes into Parliament, and they follow it to the letter of the law.
Right.
And so it rules our daily lives, like things like just straight out like climate change and what we've signed up for.
Yeah.
And that's impacting on a lot of different things, the regulation out of that. But you've got those two major parties, then you've got a splintering of other parties, both left and right. And on the right side of the spectrum, you've got all these different parties. You might have 10 different minor parties, and we're one of them. Pauline Hanson is another one.
Yep. And
they're trying to make a difference by themselves.
Yep.
And so that these governments here, the bigger two parties, need... we want to grow and form an alliance across those minor parties where take enough votes from those bigger parties where they need to have us to make decisions. Because at the moment, they don't. They have a majority. Yeah. We need to have enough, like I think you call it a freedom movement.
Right.
There's 18% in Queensland. It's the highest in the nation, man.
Okay.
Which is good. Yeah. But we're all splintered. And so we're each trying to protect our own little dunghill.
Yeah.
And so the big parties like that because they go, well, they're never going to have enough power that we have to negotiate with them to form government.
Right.
So it's about forming an alliance, and we're maturing to that.
Yeah.
The Libertarians and other parties, some of the minor parties are big on that because we can see that the only way we're going to make a difference and to protect some of our fundamental freedoms is to form some kind of alliance where you can still have their names and their minor parties, but have some like a coalition, like the Liberals and Labor do.
Yep.
And then get enough votes where they will need us to actually form government, or depending on the upper house or the lower house, and to get legislation through. Because at the moment, all these minor parties are only crossbenchers. And so they can't really, they can put up private member bills, they can talk about it, they can shine the transparency on all this legislation or some of the ridiculous decisions, but we can't have an impact on it.
So is there like, I mean, this is probably an oversimplification, so, bear that in mind, but is that group of the smaller parties theoretically, they come together and form a third major?
Yep, that's what we want to try and do. We've got to, let's face it, like you build machines,
Yep.
you cut them, you chop them.
Yep.
We've got to build a machine. And so we've got to try and look past and try and form an alliance where we put our differences aside. We don't have to agree on everything.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't agree on everything anyway. That's democracy. You batter it out, you talk about it, and you get the best outcome.
Are you talking about within that group?
Within that group.
Well, I'm sure there's people in Labor that don't agree with everybody else in Labor.
Exactly.
So,
They have their own faction. So we've got to form some kind of coalition of the willing, of the freedom parties that say, well, we can agree on this thing. We can agree on freedom of speech.
Yeah.
We hate the restrictions on our freedom of speech. We can agree that we want to decrease the level of government taxes.
Yeah.
And we agree on that, you should, like for me personally, I think a lot of those minor parties would agree that there's only two sexes, Ben.
Absolutely.
So those kind of things, those fundamental things that we can agree on and go, well, righto, let's have a coalition about that. We can still have some of our own policies here, but we all agree on that. And we're going to put up people that support that.
Yeah.
And we won't run a person in this area. We'll actually get him behind this candidate because he or she's got those values. And that is how we use that 18% to get the people that we want in. Because if you look at the other side of the ledger where you've got, say, the Greens, where they're just like, to me, like I've got some similarities with the Greens, is because they want to look after the environment, and so do we.
Yeah.
We want to look after the environment, but for us, it doesn't mean that you have to lock us out of the environment.
Absolutely.
Australians are outdoor people and we appreciate nature. We want to look after nature. I want to look after my farm for the next generation, but we don't just want to lock people out, take people away and push them all into this little city.
Yes.
So that's where the difference is at. That's where the similarities end with us.
Yeah.
So, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more influence into government and get the right kind of people with our values so we can have more impact on the laws that are coming out of Parliament at a federal, state and local level, mate. That's where we've got to go because we can all feel it spiralling down.
Yeah.
And we've got to build something to fight against it. Otherwise, what legacy are we going to leave for our kids?
Definitely, what legacy are we going to leave for our kids? What state are we going to leave this place in?
Yeah.
And again, it's like, the Aussie people are, like our history is, bunch of criminals. Like, at some point we're going to fight back pretty hard and it might not go well.
I've got convict blood.
There you go. I think that it makes so much sense to go. What was that? There was that Keanu Reeves movie about playing football or NFL. It was like the reserves or the rejects or the something like that. It was like, I'm 99% sure it was. I don't know. Google that. I'm pretty sure it was a Keanu Reeves movie.
Yep.
And it was the NFL, and they had all the big teams, and then there was this group that didn't fit the teams, so they made a team out of the group, and they ended up coming together in a way that was like rivaled the big guys that were there. And it's like, it seems like such an obvious thing to go, come up with a cool name.
Yep.
Because it's like, it needs to be something that has some impact. And go, have you maybe your top 5 things that everybody agrees on, like, stop fucking selling shit stop selling Australia.
Yep.
Stop giving it away. There's only boys and girls, whatever these 5, whatever key things are, and go, right, anything outside of that is your individual, person and your group. And if you don't get elected to your area because of your handful of things, the replacements. There you go. I knew it was something like that. Rejects, whatever. And that just seems like so logical to go, we're all not part of these 2 big ones for the same reasons.
Totally.
So let's pick 5 big things that we know are an issue and let's just hammer on that. And then everything else is just about our area and our personality.
Yep.
Because you for your area is, your personality and your background and your position, within Queensland is more rural. So you're going to have some thoughts and feelings on stuff that's not even relevant for old mate who's in Kangaroo Point.
Yep.
You know, so it's like, but you can still have the driving factors. It just makes like so much sense.
That's right. That connectivity there, like when you think about it, like rural and regional people and people living in urban areas have connectivity. We both, we need each other. We produce the food, we provide the resources. You guys provide a lot of the a lot of the services.
Yeah.
And the economic base. So that relationship needs to re-knit and become stronger.
Yeah.
And because major parties have tried to divide that.
Absolutely.
And so we need to bring that together because there is a lot of similarities. We love Australia. We love our culture. We want to put Australian people first. We love our family.
Yeah.
We want us to be a prosperous, peaceful country.
Yeah.
And we've got those values of respect, fair play, common sense. Where's common sense gone? Like,
Well, that's the old line, common sense isn't so common anymore.
Yeah, and if someone wants to work hard, well, they should enjoy the benefits that they bring.
Yeah.
But we need a safety net for people too. So for people generally needing that support. So if we can agree on all those things, so we are very similar.
Yeah.
And I think that's Australians have got to, start to ask politicians to start putting Australia first, mate.
Well, did you see that thing the other day? I saw it pop up. Albanese was doing a press conference out wherever they were standing next to the water somewhere, and just a member of the public walked up and asked him a question, and he shut him down. He said, no, we're here for the media. And it's like, well, you're not able to answer this question, or you're not capable, or whatever he said. He goes, oh, yeah, no, more than capable, more than ready, more than prepared. And so Alba goes, okay, and starts talking to you. No, not now. And you're like, dude, the guy's standing there. Are you that busy? You don't have, 90 seconds to hear the guy out, ask a question? But it's like, it feels like, this isn't a pre-vetted question that we are prepared to answer and have had, whatever amount of verbal gymnastics, scripts. Yeah. So he just shut it down. It's like, I've brought him up a couple of times, and I know, bloke's personal life wasn't great and whatever else, and he had some ups and downs. But Bob Hawke, like, I don't know if he smoked, but I know he drank.
He drank, yeah.
He definitely drank a beer.
Yeah.
But every time you would see anything of him, he was just him.
It was genuine.
Yeah. And it's like, look, I got my own personal thoughts and feelings on, blokes that cheat and carry on. It's like, well, you're a bit of a piece of shit. But at the end of the day, he wasn't hired or elected or whatever based on his home life. He was elected based on his drive for the country and what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
I think that we need to get away from these ivory tower, cotton-wooled puppets that we need a fucking Aussie back in there.
We do. Like, it's because, like, you have a look at a lot of the modern politicians these days, they've really lost touch with the people. They've just grown up in that environment where they've lost touch with the common man and woman.
Well, a career politician.
They are. So a career politician has got no life experience, mate.
Yeah.
And so to us, in this alliance, what we need is people that have life experience, that own their own business, that have gone through all those experiences, because they're better set to say, well, that policy's no good, because I've got mates out here, like, it's killing small business. We've got to stop that, or it's 77 bits of legislation for Jim to send a beef cow out the door. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
So we need those kind of politicians that are real and that can have a real connection. And a lot of the politicians in there today haven't got any connectivity with the community.
Yeah, there's this whole buffer between them and real life.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a false reality. They live in the Canberra bubble.
Yeah.
And so what we've got to do is, what we're proposing is to have more, it's a grassroots movement, mate.
Yes.
And have more grassroots. So people want a grassroots representatives representing them that they can go and say, oh, hi, Jim. Hi, Ben. Oh, this is happening. Oh, g'day, Ben. How you going? how's the business going, mate?
Yeah.
And really have that connectivity and know the issues, and you feed those issues into them. See, that's not happening.
No.
You've got all these, what are there, 750 lobbyists, registered lobbyists in Canberra, and they go and see MPs and senators and go, well, you know, we'd really like you if you did this, and, you know, sway this way. Why don't you make legislation this way? If you support this, we'll, you know, that's what lobbyists do.
So who pays the lobbyists?
Well, they're not supposed to be paid.
So what do they do for work?
Well, they're paid by industry. Industry representatives, business representatives. Well, that in the name lobbyist, mate. Think what a lobbyist does.
Well, yeah, just screams union.
Yeah, union, or they don't even have to. Yeah, union, or not even in the union, in big business, in corporation. So we're to a point, and if I can just give an example where it's to a point now with the rollout of these big industrial solar and wind farms on a lot of the environment and farmland. These little people, these little communities aren't getting a say.
Yeah.
And it's to a point where the corporations, and a lot of them are foreign, and with the government, have set this system up that they're just getting, these communities are getting steamrolled. And that's happening. That's just an example of what the renewable sector, the energy sector, but that is happening everywhere, where you've got big corporations, sure, they're private business, but they've got such links with government. It's turning into a corrupt mandate.
Yeah.
Where the government, the state and the corporates are closely linked. And you know what that happens? They just roll, mate. And the little man, the little business, the family, the workers, well, they just get rolled over.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at today. You can feel it. We've got no power.
What is it that, I mean, obviously, a creation of a third group or a third party, like what we were talking about before, is ground roots, you know, from the bottom up, you know, the people that have not lost touch with reality, that are still embedded in the communities and stuff like that. I think that's a great idea. What stops literally one morning someone going, how an Aussie would say it publicly, I don't know whether it's on the radio or whatever, just going like, right, let's fucking do it. Let's stop talking about it. Let's do it.
Yep.
Like today's the day, or Saturday, everybody from every area, or however you want to do it, if you're part of these 10 whatever groups, let's get together and let's actually make it happen. Because, you know, it's one of those things where you almost feel like everybody's talking about it, but it's not going further than that.
That's right.
Is that a time thing? Is it just for someone to stand up and go, right, line in the sand, this date, let's go?
It is. It's like people want to do it.
Yeah.
But people don't know the next step.
Right.
And when it comes to politics too, you got there's a lot of good in all the minor parties, I've got to say, on the right, but there's a lot of egos. And And sometimes when there's egos, they would let Rome burn just so they could rule the ashes. And we've got to break through that, where we've got to look at, and those people will fade. And really, parties based on just one particular personality will fade. Yeah. Parties that have a depth, so they value community input and have branches.
Yeah.
That where you and I can go along and join up, have beers, and have input into who we want elected, what we think the policy should be, issues on whatever thing that are affecting their daily lives. That's what we need. That's part of the grassroots.
Right.
And they don't have to be in a political party branch, so they can be a party that's connected. But a party does need branches, so you've got more in touch with the community, and the community feeds into that. So I think it's to a point now where there are people like Joel Jamal, even there's people in other political parties, the Libertarians, Senator Rennick with his People's First Party, that we're all seeing that we need to build a machine, and we've got to put differences aside, because if we keep going the way we are, it's like insanity, mate. We'll keep on getting the same result.
Yeah.
And we'll end up getting smaller and smaller, and these two big juggernauts over here will regulate it so much, and they've started to, that we won't exist anymore. And then we've got no option.
Right.
So we've got to put our differences aside, come together, agree on the fundamentals, and then build a machine where we get all these groups and like with different sectors, even like the sector you work in, to work in together.
Yeah.
And then make a machine that's going to stand up to this where we can make a difference and start to get Australia back. That's got to be the future or we won't be here.
No, I agree. Because, I mean, we've spoken about it a few times as well. It's like there's some, you know, some things that have been, I guess, you know, pushed through or they get put up in Parliament, but it's only Parliament talking about whether it gets through or not.
Yep.
You know, there's some, you know, whether it's the sale of land, whether it's whatever. It's like there's so many things that when you actually look at it go, that really should have gone to Australia to vote on.
That's right.
Like an election. It's like, well, okay, even though this party's in charge at the moment, this person, this party, whatever, this is what we've put forward. Right, that party's put it forward. And it goes, right, before you can action it, Australia's got to say yes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how we've let that control, because from the basic fundamental point of government was for us to elect someone to talk so that there's one voice on behalf of X amount of people, and then each one of those voices that represents that can talk to each other,
yep.
And our point is getting pushed. No, that hasn't happened in years. Like, they're pushing their point, the upper crust. And it's like, when did we have a say in 90% of the stuff that's gone through, other than who's in the seat?
That's right.
And even then, that's kind of manipulated anyway. But when did we really get a choice? I think the last one was, what was that last thing that we had to vote on?
The voice.
The voice, that. So, fine, that went out. But you know what? That whole process should happen when you want to sell a bit of land to someone that's not Australian,
yep.
or a company that's not based in Australia, or however they do shelf things and whatever else, but so that it's still us.
So we've got more chance for those big decisions, like referendums. So we should have more referendums. Like, look at the way we're like the internet these days, and where we can like work out a way where we can do it a lot cheaper. So what they spend on the voice, $460 million or something like that for one.
Oh, God.
Yep, so just to do one. So we'd need to, but with electronics and voting like that, we could do it in a way where you could get the bulk of the population to input, read it, analyse it. This is what we agree. And so it's it's quicker feedback loop, yeah?
Absolutely.
And that's what we've got to do to get people more involved in politics. And I think I agree with you, mate. These big decisions that are going through, and you go, well, when did we decide that?
Yeah,
we didn't agree to that. You wouldn't run a business like that. You'd go broke, and that's what's happening now. So yeah. I agree, mate. That's part of the machine. That's what that machine needs to go. Well, we want this.
Yeah,
because we're getting left out. Look around. How many people feel voiceless and forgotten? And this guy that's man or lady that's supposed to represent it, they're not representing them because they're representing the party.
Yes.
And the big business.
Yeah.
The little person is nothing these days. Yeah. And you notice it, and I'm just going to say it. It's like we're in what we can feel now and what's happening with the way Australia is going. It's like we're transitioning from a free country,
yeah,
to a communist country.
Yeah.
And what we're feeling each day when we see these different rules come down, well, it's taken away our freedoms. We can't go there. We're locked out of this. We've got to have a permit for that. That's going towards communism, where the state controls everything. There is no private business. We all work for the state.
Yeah.
Remember, in the last 3 years, 82% of the jobs created were created by the state, people working for the state.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on a minute. So, within Queensland, the last how many years?
I think it's actually 12 in the 12 months. In the last 12 months, 82% of the positions were state positions, federally. For all the jobs, federally jobs. Because remember, federal promote, they pay for a lot of different things.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's federal money. And then you've got people working for the federal.
But 82% of jobs created in Queensland.
No, in the nation.
In the nation.
Yeah.
82% in the last 12 months, 82% of the jobs created in the nation
yep.
were government-based.
Government-based, mate. And you can see so what's that doing to the bureaucracy?
Well, it's just fueling it and making it bigger.
Yeah, and so when the bureaucracy is bigger, who pays for the bureaucracy?
Well, the taxpayers.
So our taxes go up, yeah? So we're feeding this. That's why we're in a cost of living crisis, because of the cost of government crisis. It's growing like this, and it's asking more of us to feed it.
And what's their justification for the need for growth? It's just more legislation, or
Well, in the last 3 years, they've put on this Labor government, and Liberal National are no better. Labor has put on 36,000 public servants at a cost of $5 billion. And does your life seem any better because of it?
but to do what?
Well, let's see. In Canberra alone, there's 106,000 public servants that their main job is red tape, green tape compliance. So that's probably where, a lot of my compliance comes for on the farm. Some of it does, some of it's state-driven, yeah.
So to make sure that hang on, that hurts my head.
It's pretty scary, isn't it?
Do you know this?
That's a lot of public servants, mate, eh?
That's ridiculous.
It is.
And didn't the police, the upper crust, didn't they all just give themselves a pay rise relatively recently too, as well?
Yep.
And how much debt are we in?
Well, we're nearly, just off the top of my head, don't quote me, you can probably search it on Google, it's about 956 billion. So we're heading towards $1 trillion. I think the US is 36 trillion. So we're not but we're a lot smaller. But that's what we are.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but when it was Bob Hawke and oh God, I can never remember
Keating.
Keating.
No. Yeah.
Didn't we have a surplus? Weren't we like in
Yeah.
the
We
black?
had no debt. We had no, and under how we had very little debt.
And we still had Medicare.
Yep.
And we so what is it that's changed? Like, other than their management of the money, what is it that is in Australia? Because we manufacture probably less than we ever have. So we're also selling off more of our stuff than we ever have. Mm-hmm. So what is it that other than the government's management of our money, what is it that's changed? Why are we spending so much, and why are we so far backwards?
Because in order to insert more control and compliance and rules and regulations costs a lot of money. You've got to have a lot of public servants to do that. You know, you've got public servants in Canberra that are on $900,000 a year or $1 million a year. And when the Prime Minister, don't quote me, I think he's on 400,000 to 500,000, if that. So they're on twice the money that the Prime Minister is. Mate, the bureaucracy is the other government. So we've got local government, state government, federal government, and the bureaucracy. They hold the power.
So there's someone that is employed by Australia in the government that's on twice what the guy that's running the joint's on.
Yep. Way more. That's right.
That just sounds retarded.
Yeah, that's right. It's out of control. They're on way more than when you compare what, say, a high-level public service executive director on or director general, when you compare what someone in the States is on who's got a population, 350 million, 330 million people, and they manage a federal department, they get like, say, $250,000.
Yeah.
Our joker over here, he's managing Australia, 25 million population, he's on 1.2 million.
We're in the wrong industry, buddy. Hey?
So you can see where a lot of the money goes, and you need a lot of inspectors, a lot of compliance. The bureaucracy costs a lot of money. If this Olympics coming up in Brisbane, if we had an event where it was all about creating bureaucracy, regulation and compliance, Australia would probably be world champions because we are great at develop strategic plans and great at developing rules and regulations that stifle productivity. Remember, the more bureaucracy you've got, the more it stifles productivity because you've got to wade through, all, say for me, like you've got to wade through all that compliance before you go and do something.
Yeah.
Whether if, you've got to have a certain level of regulation. I'm not here to say open slather. You've got to have enough for a civilised society. Yeah, that's what we want. But you can't have too much that stifles the most effective way to do business.
No, and like I mean, this is obviously an oversimplification, but like when I get how'd you be again? Good God, I feel like I'm going to have a fucking aneurysm. You need no one. Are you good?
Yeah.
That's painful to hear. Here, give us your soldier. I'll get rid of you. Yeah. So when I can go out and buy an 80 series cruiser.
Yeah.
And I can chop the arse end of it off, turn it into a ute. But what did you have up there? What were you waiting for me on something? Oh, okay. What have we got here? How much debt are we in?
Gross debt, 1.6 trillion.
Yeah. 1.067 trillion, 23 to 24.
Expected.
Well, that's the 23 to 24 budget forecasts for a further increase. Oh, two, right.
I think as it stands now, we're now at 956 billion. But yeah, we'll get 200 billion to come. So that, that's...
Yeah, there you go.
Yep, so that was May last year, 897 billion. Imagine the interest on that.
Well,
That's 23.
Yeah. It's a lot of money.
Wow. Okay, Megan, I want to come back to that. So yeah, I can go and buy and say an 80 series cruiser, and I can chop the arse end off, turn it into a ute, do the chassis bracing, tray mounts, all the stuff. My legislation is it gets engineer inspected and gets a blue plate, and then it goes to another place and gets a roadworthy. Because the roadworthy is the final step because it needs to include the blue plate modification, and then it's done. That's it. Yep. 2 things. And that's effectively rebuilding kind of, a third of a car.
Yep.
And arguably, from a safety aspect, from a, fabrication aspect, from all that sort of stuff, it's like, it's pretty involved what has to happen to that vehicle whilst it's here and getting done, and then it's inspected by 2 independent bodies, and I'm finished.
Yep.
I'm really kind of a little bit blown away by 77 bits of paper. I'm sure there's more than one piece of paper per item, but 77 things that you've got to deal with from a calf to a sale.
Yep.
Because beef cattle's what, 3 years, 4 years?
No, I can sell something straight off the cow after 8 or 9 months.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's even quicker than I thought then.
Yep.
It's like you barely, 8 or 9 months, you barely have time to read everything.
Yeah, well, it changes so quick too. Remember that we've got legislation that constantly changes. It's up to us. Like with vegetation mapping, it changes. I think it's changed 13 times in the last 7 or 8 years. So the colour on your property changes, so what you can clear, what you can't clear.
That's for the sustainable kind of regrowth and all.
Yeah. But there's a lot of stuff like there's reef regulations where we live in a designated catchment that they've defined that goes into the reef, where it's called the Mary Burnett where I live. Yeah. The Burnett River and the Mary River both go out. Mary goes out just near Harvey Bay.
Yeah.
And the Burnett goes out Bundaberg. None of that water ever reaches the reef. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a pretty substantial gap between where it starts and the reef.
75 k's, and you've got this big current, this Eastern Australian eddy that pushes all that water to the south.
Yeah.
So we've got this whole cloak of regulation that says how much ground cover I need to do, what at the end of September each year. It's currently at 50%. And good farmers, we had all that beforehand.
Yeah.
You should maintain ground cover, what pesticides you use. But now it's to a point where if I want to grow a crop on country that hasn't been farmed once in the last 5 years, I've got to apply for a development permit from the government. Costs money over a certain size if it's over 10 hectares.
Yeah.
Now, if I just grow, because it's a commercial, if I want to sell that crop commercially, yeah?
Right.
But if I can clear every inch on my property and use that grain and feed my cows with or got hay, but because I'm not selling it off farm, I don't need a permit.
Wow.
How's that work? So what they're trying to do is to stop you selling stuff commercially.
But you would think that, like, even from just a tax point of view, wouldn't that serve them better?
You know what it is? It's about legislation that's been developed based on the wrong evidence. The evidence isn't there. There's no evidence. Like you talk to, I've got a mate, Dr. Peter Ridd.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of Peter Ridd. He's very outspoken that a lot of the legislation that's coming through isn't based on sound science. It's based on political ideology.
Right.
Where sometimes you might have some international group that's attached, that's well funded by a lot of private businesses saying, well, no, we want this done in Australia, and they've got some on-ground groups that make that happen, that lobbyists that go to government and say, well, you know.
Yep.
And so legislation gets developed without sound scientific backing.
Right.
So what we're saying, what a lot of people are saying, with any legislation that comes up and there's scientific data used to develop regulation and compliance should be assessed independently.
Yeah.
And should be put through saying and say, yeah, no, that's right, that's true. We've got independent sciences that aren't paid by the government or a corporation attached to the government, so you can get an unbiased opinion.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't happen. And that happens across the board. Legislation is, or a lot of regulatory policy generally is not based on sound science.
That's almost as silly as bloody Jesse was saying. They down in Victoria near the beach there, they got the sand dunes, and they've got one area they shut off that you couldn't drive on because of some bird.
Yep.
The next area they shut off because it was conservation and whatever. Or maybe the first part was Aboriginal something, the sacred land or something, and then it was you couldn't drive on this next section because it was damaging it and whatever else, and then they opened a sand mine next to it. And what the fuck, man?
The sand mine doesn't damage it, mate. It's got all the right permits.
Yeah. Well, so apparently, if you've got a piece of paper, all the bad stuff just goes away.
Well, I've got a mate that lives in Baralaba. He owns quite a big place, 10,000 acres. Really
Nice.
good farmer. Has won awards of how he looks after his country.
Yeah.
Land care awards, sustainability awards. So he's right up there. He just dug a quarry. It was an acre, so he could put gravel on his roads driving around, so it doesn't go through. It's all that black soil country.
Yeah. Yep.
You sink up to your axles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so it's trying to be more sustainable. Well, he got a visit from the reef police, the reef compliance police, that they had satellite imagery where they seen him digging this quarry. So they went onto his place. They're like police. They're allowed to go on, ask your records. They wanted to meet with him. They met with him. They went to the site and said, mate, what are you doing? That's bare area. And he says, well, I'm trying to line my roads, mate, stop erosion and be more sustainable. And they said, well, you needed a permit to do that. And so they were going to take him to court. And so 10 k's away on the range, they've blown the top off this range, literally these foreign renewable developers, to put with these massive wind turbines.
Yep.
And he said to him, what about these guys up there? They're blowing the top off this range, clearing native vegetation. He goes, well, no, the legislation doesn't cover them. They're exempt.
Yeah, right.
Can you see the corrupt mandate between state and corporations?
Yeah.
that's how it works. And all the clearing that's done for renewables, those big wind farms and all that they blow the tops off mountain, put those big tracks in, that's counted as coming from agriculture.
What a joke. And all for something that's not worth doing anyway.
Well, look, wind turbines only have a capacity factor, so the percentage of time they meet their quoted maximum capacity when they're generating. In the last 12 months in Australia, 29% of the time.
And what is it about them that's killing all the wildlife off? Is it the vibration or the harmonic noise that the animals just take off from? Or?
Yeah. So it's a number of things. Well, it's the clearing to start with.
Obviously,
and the roads, because you imagine some of these turbines, they're 200 metres high at the hub where the blades go onto, and then each of the three blades is 100 metres long.
Yeah.
And so when they spin, they cover an area of 5 football fields. So there's a lot of clearing, a lot of crane work, a lot of roading work that needs to get up there. And a lot of cabling between them. But it's the actual blades that go around. So a lot of the migratory birds, eagles, bats, insects get wiped out by these blades. Yeah. And they don't even have to go. Bats only have to go near the blades, and it's the pressure wave that actually explodes the bats.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and even us, if you've got a big object, 100 metres long, that's a long blade, yeah? You see them on trucks, mate, they're big.
Yeah.
And they're swinging past the mast, the big stationary 200-metre object, that causes a noise vibration and a very low megahertz noise. We can't hear it.
Yeah.
But guess what? That sound, I think it's below 16 megahertz, we can't hear. Above that, that's when we can hear.
Yeah.
The animal kingdom in Australia, a lot of the mammals, our koalas, they communicate at about 4 megahertz. So they're building all these wind turbines up the top of these pristine areas, which haven't been cleared for agriculture or because it's too high up. Why would you clear it anyway?
Yeah.
But that's where all the koalas are hanging out with their mates, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so you've got these big wind turbines swishing around. They've got all this noise coming off them, and these sound waves, so they can't communicate with their mates because it drowns out that noise. And so it can affect koalas up to 10 k's behind and 10 k's in front of the turbine. So they're all out of there. But none of that gets taken into consideration. There are scientists saying that we should be doing research. What are you doing when you've got koalas in some of these, like Lotus Creek up near Rockhampton?
Yeah.
It has got the highest percentage of koalas in Queensland on that site. And they're going to build massive turbines on it, mate.
So,
I know it's crazy. But me as a farmer, if I went and cleared land I'd be in jail. There is. I could show it. I'll send it to you. There is they call it it's a biodiversity management plan from one of the companies. I'm not going to say which one, up near Rockhampton.
Yeah.
And in that, how they're going to manage the impact of their development. And in there it says, well, if we come across koalas, we'll try and get them out of the tree before we clear it. If it falls over and the koala's injured, well, they've got instructions there what kind of tools that the people need to carry to put that koala down.
Yeah, to euthanize it.
Yeah, so it's got there. They should be carrying crowbars and clubs to actually take that koala out.
That's fucking pathetic.
It's in there in black and white, mate. But can you see why communities are getting a bit peeved off where it's so unbalanced? I've got to keep 50% ground cover on my place. I've got to all these rules and regulations. You come to, say, this industry, well, they're exempt. They just do a management plan, or we're going to plant trees over here. Once you wipe the top of a range out where it's got beautiful trees that have never been cleared before, full of koalas, full of sugar gliders, goshawks, mate, they're never coming back. You can't just plant 100 acres over here and say, oh, well, that's just replaced what we've knocked down. Mate, you can't do that. It doesn't work.
And I don't know what it is, but I'm assuming it's not the same trees anyway. They'll just plant pine forests or whatever.
Well, and some of the offsets, all right, they might put offsets of growth forests over here. Well, it only lasts the length of the, remember these developments only last 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of impacts. A lot of birds get hit. A lot of eagles get hit.
So is anybody is anybody sitting down, like, how do I want to say this, in some sort of public forum, whether it's a recorded interview or on stage and like some sort of debate or whatever, is anybody asking and bringing these to the upper crust attention and going, like, laying out something like that, like, pick an area, this is an issue, this is what's going to happen. Don't answer me with, oh, there's a management plan in place. How do you feel about that, mate? And letting and have them answer it. Is that happening, or they dodge the question?
No, it is. Well, you can say, like, you know, there was people, and I think it's bad too, like protesting about where they're going to put the new stadium in Brisbane. Remember, it's taken over that green space. And the people saying, what about the trees? What about the trees? But then we look out into what they're doing in the regional areas with wind turbines and solar panel developments. They're blowing the tops off mountains. They're clearing large swathes of the environment.
Yeah.
No one's saying anything about that. So, like a group called Rainforest Reserves Australia, about the only really true conservative conservation group in Australia, are actually taking one of the developers to court.
Right.
That's happening in Sydney, first week of April. So what a lot of the politicians say, and the two big parties, are saying that, well, there's only a minimal amount. So, you know, we've got to, there'll be some negative impacts, but because of climate change, if we don't put in these wind turbines, there's going to be a lot more impact on the environment. That's their get out of jail card, mate. That's what they keep saying. They say it all the time.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
And so nobody's then answering that with, well, here's the efficiency rating of that versus, say, I don't know. I mean, we've never had nuclear in Australia, have we?
Yeah, well, we've got nuclear in Australia. We've had it since 1958 in the Lucas Heights nuclear reactor.
Yeah, right.
Based in Sydney. Yeah, it's actually, we've even gone through a rebuild of that reactor once.
Wow. I didn't even know that. Yeah. I love this show.
We're actually one of the world leaders in managing and teaching other people how to manage nuclear waste. We've developed technologies to help other countries manage it. But remember that nuclear waste in Australia, or the nuclear Lucas Heights nuclear reactor, is for medical, medical isotopes.
Yeah.
But we're set up for it. We could do nuclear. Nuclear compared to renewables even has got a way less footprint. There's been studies, and it's hard to get out of the government how much, but the information is there. The amount of area that is needed for renewables, because of the limited capacity factor, you've got to overbuild so much. Remember, if it's only 29%, well, you've got to overbuild it to get anywhere near the capacity factor. And then it needs all the transmission. It needs the battery backup. It needs these big pumped hydro schemes to give it, to balance it and to store that unused power. Well, in coal or gas or nuclear, you don't need any of that.
No, because it's like one in, one out, kind of bang, done, you're ready.
That's right. We can use the existing transmission. And it has modern nuclear reactors have a capacity factor of anything up to 92, 96%.
Wow.
Coal, when it's running efficiently and properly maintained, they can have a capacity factor of 60, 70%. Solar in the last 12 months in Australia is 19%. And remember, solar lasts about 20 years, max. Wind lasts max 25 years. But what we're finding in Australia, because all of it's 98% of the components for the renewable industry, guess where they come from?
Where?
China.
Really?
So you know how all the Greens and that saying, well, we've got to stop using coal. Coal's bad. Fossil fuels are bad. Guess what all the renewable components are made with in China?
Well, yeah, it's like people that, you know, they get a generator to charge up their electric car.
That's right. So we're hypocritical.
Yeah.
And so the thing with renewables, they can't give us the baseload power because you can't run a smelter or a big manufacturing hub on power that runs at 29%. And if you get a series of dark windless days, well, you've got no power. They need constant power, mate. And so that's why a lot of industry is getting out of Australia. Plastic industries, smelting industries. Guess where they're going? To the States, or they're going to China, or somewhere that has always on 24/7 power.
Yeah.
So we are going to see how it is shrinking Australian manufacturing. So we've got the choice to be a strong nation, but we're turning into a weak nation because electricity is like our nervous system, mate. If we haven't got baseload power, we won't have a society.
So why didn't they just keep allowing people to, with all the solar panels on the roofs, to keep feeding back into the system? Because wasn't that a thing for a while? They were like,
yeah.
I mean, I get the warehouses in China of panels because I don't know what to do with them yet. I get that. And whether you've got like what was the Simpsons? They had the little nuclear rod when they were done with it. It was like this. Yeah, shoot it into space. Just whatever.
Yeah.
Fuck it off. Just give it to Elon. He'll work it out. But I get the solar panels and I get the batteries because, you know, the lithium and the panels, and they've got no idea what to do with any of that shit yet.
Yep.
But wasn't the whole thing in the beginning with solar was that it was connected to the grid and they gave you rebates or whatever to put a shit ton on your roof, and it was like you were using it while you were using it, and whatever you didn't use went back into the grid. So why did they stop doing that? Wasn't that like way more efficient than these turbines and stuff?
Because I use solar on the farm. I've got solar pumps. Solar fences. What happens when there's too much, and that's what's happened now, there's too much solar on your roof, the network can't handle it.
Right.
And it's very expensive to upgrade the network over time to make sure it can handle it.
Yeah.
And it's getting to a point where they don't know what to do with it. So they're going to charge it, or they want you to have wall batteries to store it in.
Yeah.
And people think that's a great idea. And there is a catch there, because what they want and what we're looking at, they call it, and this is all written down in a plan called the Integrated System Plan. So it's like a roadmap of how we're going to get to 100% renewables by 2050. Remember, there's a goal out there now, 82% renewables. You might hear Albanese raving on about it by 2030.
Yeah.
So it's a plan. So they're going to want the community to have their own power plants, through solar wall batteries. And when you have an electric car, because we're supposed to be all driving electric cars, I think 85% of us by 2030, it's not going to happen.
Well, I'm not doing it, so yeah.
No, and so when you plug your car in, they will take the power. So when there's a lapse of power over here, and this is what it's called, community energy resources, they can take your power and use it over here. So they can drain your car overnight, take it out of your wall battery, and use it to fix a power gap over here. That's the virtual power plant. So some of it is compulsory, some of it can be voluntary, but it will be compulsory if there's gaps and the grid's going to go down. So you will lose control. And that is why the smart meters are coming on, because they can, when there's too many people have got their air cons on, there's too much drain, with renewable energy doesn't provide enough energy, or they can switch your appliance off without telling you.
Really?
That's what smart meters do, mate.
Wow.
So that's where we always say we need energy security. We need a strong baseload system. We should be able to have our air cons on when we want to have them on.
Yeah.
We should be able to have industry that makes stuff, a heavy industry. We should be self-sufficient. Without energy security, we don't have any sovereignty, and we are for the taking to be taken over. So,
is there anything that's doable in a house that's part of, say, Brisbane, where you can go, I don't want to be on the grid?
You could do like, so, well, I know for me, if I didn't want to be on the grid, I could have my own solar, and which is good.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, solar and wind in the right place, in a community, works fine. It works enough to power that, but on a mass basis, it's not going to get it done, mate. But yeah, you could go off grid. You'd have to cut your line and go off grid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've said for years I'd love to buy a block of dirt, and I would be like,
A lot of people are.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I don't want the sewer, don't want the power, nothing. We're just self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Grow our own veggies. As long as we've got enough power to keep the beer cold.
Well, at least you'll be able to grow your own have your chooks and have enough eggs, because you can't get eggs in, mate. Where are all the eggs, mate?
No. It's like when the iceberg lettuce got to like $5 a lettuce or something at one point. I've never understood inflation and how interest. Like, what is that crossover? And I'm sorry, I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but it's like you're a plethora of information, so I'm like absorbing what I can.
Yep.
The inflation versus interest rates. Why is it that when inflation goes up, the interest rates go up?
Well, remember, inflation is created by paper money, yeah?
Yeah.
And so the more paper money is produced, the less value the dollar has.
Yes.
And the more people have to be charged, the more interest rates go up.
Right. So, because I've never understood that, it's like the cost of living is going up. So to offset that, they're going to put the interest rates up, which to me is kind of like, if you know that the cost of living is going up, why would? Because I mean, most of Australians have some kind of debt.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly.
I think my sister with her properties, I think her monthly went up by a couple of grand in her repayments. It's like, okay, the cost of living is getting more expensive, so we're going to take even more of your money off you and give you no benefit for it.
It thefts your wealth from you, because look what $100 you buy for $100 now. It's not much, is it? You can whip through $100. It's like what $20 used to be.
Yeah.
Again, I come back to look at what government has spent in the last 3 years, the Labor government. Off the top of my head, $346 billion it's spent. And so it's putting all that money out there. So that increases inflation.
So when they do that, they just print more money.
Print more money. That's right.
So if they're printing more...
Yeah, there's more in circulation, so
but then
it has
why
less
have we
value.
got debt?
Well, we've got debt because, they've gone and spent $346 billion, and guess what? It's money we didn't have.
Right.
It's money we didn't have, mate. We haven't... We want Libertarians and other parties too, like we want... sure, we're all about cash.
Yeah.
We want to keep cash.
Absolutely.
We don't want a cashless society, but we like gold as well. We want like a currency that's backed up by hard assets.
Yes.
Like gold.
Yeah.
And even we're pretty keen on Bitcoin too. There's a lot of people getting into the Bitcoin, which we don't mind that.
Yeah.
But we need currency backed up by a hard asset.
Absolutely.
Where when you print money, it's not what's backed up.
Just ones
and
zeros.
So it loses value. It loses value, mate. And you can feel it losing value, can't you?
Absolutely.
And the more the government grows, that 106,000 public service, the more money it needs to keep itself there. So it has to tax you more.
Yeah, there was something that we saw on YouTube ages ago, and it was how to get from, I think it was $100 to basically nothing in 5 steps, and it was something like, old mate goes to an ATM and withdraws $100, and he goes to, the parts department in a shop.
Yep.
And so immediately off the bat, $10 is gone with GST, and then he spends 90, so that 90 goes into the product that he's purchased and the profit margins, and then the company tax, and then it gets that what's left of that's like, I don't know, $60 or something, and then the guy that's working there that took the order, he gets paid his hourly rate, and then he pays tax on that. And however it went down, it was like within like 5 or 6 steps, the $100 was worth nothing, and everything had ended up in the government's hand as tax.
Yep.
Because it was like the 100 to 0 in 5 steps of tax or something like that.
Pretty scary.
It's like, it's nuts.
Well, look at fuel. The tax excise.
Oh, alcohol.
Yeah, well, look at the alcohol. But look at fuel, for example. 51% is the government fuel excise. And then you got GST. It gets taxed GST as well. So 56 cents gets taxed for every litre.
Wow. And
so we want to cut that. We don't want it there, mate. You shouldn't be paying any excise on fuel. And people go, because it ranges off the top of my head. Fuel excise brings in about $19.4 billion a year for the government.
Right.
They spend $9.4 billion on roads. Where does the rest go?
Well, apparently employing a shitload of people.
And guess what? I'll come back to the renewables as well. It costs, because energy is everything.
Yes.
It costs $16 billion a year in subsidies that we provide to corporations and companies for renewable energy. So for every megawatt hour that they produce a renewable energy, they get paid. They get $85. So they can put, a company with a wind turbine development can put power onto the grid, and when the power price is, say, negative 50 cents a megawatt hour, and still make money. And people go, just how? Because the government has set up, because it's renewable energy, was signed off on the climate change deal, scam, we pay them. That's how they get money.
So they're feeding into a grid that is already too full, and we can't use our solar at home.
Well, that's right too, but see, you can see how we're paying them. That's $16 billion. People say, oh, Libertarians, you want to cut this. How are you going to pay for it? Well, I've just found $16 billion for you.
Yeah.
That's gonna cover a bit.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other ways there, mate. If we went, look what's happening in America, and I'll use America for example, their Department of Government Efficiency.
Yes.
Look at the amount of money they've found, the wastage and inefficiency. We need to do the same in Australia, because guess what? There's a lot of waste in the Australian bureaucracy that we want to make sure that we want them to be spending their money like it's their own money.
Yeah.
Hey, because public servants have got no it's not their own money.
No.
If a project doesn't go as well as planned or goes over, they go, oh, well, who did the planning on that? Geez, sorry, Ben.
G'day, legends. To help support the brands and support us, get onto our website and check out who we've chosen to partner with. For everything custom 4x4 and accessories, visit wildsidegarage.com. While you're there, don't forget to check the links for the discount section, where you can get 10% off brands like Carbon Off-Road, MAXTRAX, and In-House Fabrication. Remember to like and subscribe to help us grow the channel and bring you even more from Wildside.
Well, Elon was over here. I think it was 60 Minutes or Current Affair. He did the interview, and he was going off about Australian electricity prices. And that was years ago.
Yep. Yeah, we've got one of we went from the cheapest, $50 to $60 a megawatt hour. And now we're up to about 120, 130. And experts are saying it could go as well past 200.
So with the efficiency of technology, it's and especially the introduction of non-manned components. So, these machines aren't on X amount of dollars an hour that they're getting paid and, calling in sick with a hangover.
Yep.
So with the efficiency of technology on every level, shouldn't this shit be getting cheaper?
It should be. Like, our power should be getting, it's not getting cheaper because of the amount of subsidies we pay.
Yes.
The amount of transmission that is needed because remember, renewables are very widespread distributed, yeah?
Yeah.
Right across. So that it's weak power, not concentrated power like coal, gas or nuclear. So you've got to build it. So those big high voltage lines cost a lot of money per kilometre, mate.
Yeah, right.
Heaps. So that adds a massive cost.
I know what it costs to fit out this joint with three-phase, so it's I get it.
So it's the overbuild. You've got to build so much.
Yeah.
It's the transmission costs, and it's all the backup power. So it's like renewables need a life support system, a massive life support system to be able to operate.
At 30%.
Yeah, but guess what? When CSIRO, our chief scientific organisation, did the thing called the Gen Costs Report, they only looked at the levelised cost of power. And what that means is that renewable asset, that solar factory or wind farm factory, what it cost, how long it would take to generate enough power to pay itself back for. It didn't take in any of the light support system of what it would cost. So they're saying, and that's why you get Bowen and Albanese saying renewables is the cheapest form of power, because they've only looked at this one spot.
Yeah,
they haven't looked at all this other thing that's needed to actually do it and the lifespan of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like when someone goes, why do you charge, back in the day when I was still doing window tinting, it's like, why do you charge $500 for a tint job when a roll of film's $300?
Yeah.
Shed.
Yeah.
Electricity, staff.
Yeah.
You go, if you're just going to look at the piece of film that gets used, it's pretty expensive.
That's right.
As far as an end result for a customer, but that's because there's a shit ton more involved than just buying the roll of film.
So they're just not telling you the whole story.
Yeah.
So, and that's why they're allowed to say that. So under the current energy system, our power is going to continue to increase unless we get back to coal, gas. Nuclear's a way off yet, but it will come. All the other countries, look at the development of artificial intelligence and robotics. It's only going to increase, and they need massive amount of power. Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook are all going to nuclear plants to run their AI systems. They cost a heap of money. They use a heap of electricity, mate. They can see that we need baseload power.
Yeah.
Australia has got to get back to energy security. We're not going to get it out of renewables, mate. And plus, you're destroying the environment.
Yes.
We're relying on China for all our parts. And guess what? China doesn't like us. They recently, about the boats or the Navy flotilla that was off international waters. Guess what China was doing when they did a naval exercise that went around Australia and off the east coast of Australia? They were there practicing drills for missions to lob missiles into our key assets, like Amberley, like our dams, like Williamtown near Newcastle. They weren't there twiddling their thumbs going, oh, chuck a line over. Isn't this great to be in Australia in the Tasman Sea? Yeah. They were there practicing war games. And we didn't even know. We are swinging in the breeze, mate. We should have had surveillance over aircrafts over going, what are you doing? We don't like it that you're here.
Yeah.
They were testing us and we failed. Our defence system, we're in a bit of trouble. I know I'm jumping over to that, but can you see how as a nation, we're seen as weak? Our power supply is going to be weak and unreliable and weather dependent. Why? I know there's a lot of people, a lot of your listeners might believe in climate change. I believe in climate change, but I don't believe in human-induced climate change.
No, I agree.
And the climate has been changing, and we should adapt.
Yeah.
We're good at adapting. And we should be making sure as we adapt, we increasing our food productivity because it's a growing world. We'll soon be at 10 billion people in 2050. We're 8.2 billion now.
Yeah.
And we should be making sure we look after the environment more.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean locking us out the environment, mate.
No, it doesn't. And that's kind of a little bit full circle back to
it is
shutting down our bloody tracks and beaches.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how far you want to go down this, but
let's go right down.
Let's go right down. Deep dive. Okay, if we bypass the fact that there's parts of Australia have been sold, right? Because that's a whole kettle of fish in and of itself. It's like, why can't we just go, well, look, we know we sold it to you, but we're a bunch of convicts anyway. We're taking it back, put it on our tab or whatever. But the concept of shutting down the four drive parks, the issues with Glasshouse, all that sort of stuff, beaches. Jesse was on here last week talking about the impacts, of the mental health side of it. Prior to that, Tony was on from GME and his show and all the stuff that he's been doing with the 24,000 signatures I think he got for the state parks and forestries and all that sort of stuff. What is it that, other than signing petitions when they come up and going along to put a voice out and all that sort of stuff, what is it that the average everyday bloke that enjoys four-wheel driving on the weekend, how can we, what can we do to stop everything being shut and beaches being shut for whatever reason, whether it's forestries or land rights or whatever, because it's like it's getting pretty scary.
It is. Yep, and the noose is tightening and tightening and tightening.
Yeah.
So what we have to do, and remember I talked about that at Alliance again. Well, across the four-wheel drive, recreational and industrial sector, we have to form some kind of like industry group or alliance group. And that alliance group needs to fit in and plug in to this machine here.
Right.
And so we can have more people that because it's all politics, yeah?
Yeah.
Because all these regulations and compliance, all the rules comes out of politics.
Okay.
And give advice to bureaucracies, even though the bureaucracy has a lot of control these days.
Yeah.
And so we need to get behind those different parties that agree with you that we should have access, that we should Australians shouldn't be locked out for all the reasons you've just stated. Good for mental health, good for our culture. It's part of our culture, isn't it?
I grew up watching the Bush Tucker
Yeah.
Man and all
Yeah.
that. You know, it's like
The Leyland brothers.
Yes.
Right. So we've got to come together and support parties collectively that have the same ideals that you want. And so
Right.
as an industry, it'd be good to have some kind of summit where you get these key groups together and go, well, what are we going to do? Who are we going to support? We will support these political parties because we've gone and approached them and we've sent them out. Do you agree with this? Do you think we should have access to this? Blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. That's what you need to do, because you need to form some kind of spear that's going to help this movement make sure that we don't get locked out of Australia.
So that would be state to state, though, wouldn't it?
It can be state to, because you've got local government that are starting to lock us out. We've got state government, but then you've got federal government as well.
But how much federal government is involved in something like Flatten and Little Red?
Well, they've got directives that they give to state government, that's for sure.
Right.
And they've got legislation. Remember, the states are signed, they're signed off on a lot of different initiatives that the federal government provides where the state has to meet certain things. Like I'll take one for example. Australia signed up to a treaty, international treaty, where we're going to have 30% of Australia's land and water into a state, like state land. So 30% of Australia will be locked up, well, not locked up, potentially locked up. So you're going to have, I think it's about another 30 million hectares that are going to be made into national parks between now and 2030 to reach this target. So the states say the federal government...
They're getting that back off already privately owned stuff, are they?
Yep, they'll go and buy stuff up. You know what happens when there's national parks? There's no access or very limited access.
Yeah.
There's definitely a very limited four-wheel drive depending on the type of park it is.
Yeah.
And so the more the national park estate expands, it doesn't mean you're going to get any more access.
Let's just say, so they're expanding the amount and locking out more.
Yes. Yep, because remember we've signed up to these treaties that... Why are we signing up to these treaties for when it takes away the rights of Australians to access Australia?
And is this something that we voted on, or is this something that just got pushed through?
Something that's got pushed through, mate.
See, that just brings me back to the whole thing. They make a decision. We need to be able to be made aware, and it should be our choice.
It should be.
Because they'll call on us when China show up.
Yeah.
Conscription will come back real quick.
That's right.
You know, so it's like, well, who was it? I think it was Pauline who was talking about, it might have been Melinda. Talking about, like, would you fight for your country? And she's like, right now, I think it was Melinda. She's like, right now, it's like, what is it I'm fighting for? I lose more and more of what you're asking me to fight for on a daily basis.
Yep.
You know, and it's like, so...
We're losing our culture.
Yeah.
And what we value.
And I get that in comparison to somewhere like America, and, you know, America then compared to someone older again. I get that we're young as a country. You know, it's, you know, our history, you know, in the way of life we have at the moment, you know, is pretty fresh. So I get that it could almost be given, you know, under the thing, growing pains. You know, we've never had this many people. We've never had this many voices. Social media has created a platform for every idiot. But, yeah, it's like that just comes right back to shit getting done without the people that it's affecting having had a say.
That's right.
Which that's just completely the opposite of why we have a government.
It's not democracy.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm so new to some of this stuff because I've lived under a rock for so long, and it's like I just have my bubble, and it's like it's almost in spite of my effort to try and stay out of it.
Yeah, same.
It's now encroaching on my bubble, And I'm like, it's almost forcing me to go, hang on a minute, I need to understand this better because you're now messing with my day-to-day. And I'm so removed from so many different aspects of, big business or politics or whatever. So if it's getting to me, it's a fucking problem.
Yep.
Because I get up, I go to work, I do my thing, I pay my bills, I go home, and every now and then I get to go away.
Yeah.
And so if it's coming to me, because I don't watch the news as little as possible. So if I'm hearing about it and it's affecting my day-to-day, there's a pretty serious issue going on. So
definitely. Getting
back to what you were saying with they're expanding it to, when's the 30% by?
2030.
So 30% of, and is that national or was that state?
National, but states have got to meet the same target.
Right, so 30% of Queensland is going to be under state forestries.
Yep. Some kind of state land. National parks, probably.
Yeah, okay. So the best that we're going to get through that's probably fire trails. Like
if that. Remember under the, like with environmental regulations increasing, the state wants to bring in more nature positive laws, less impacts. They don't want fossil fuel driven cars driving around through their native trails and state forests, causing erosion, siltation, weed spread. They want to limit that, mate. So there's only one way the access to state land's going, and we can see that right now. It's going to be less and less and less unless we stand up and say, well, Australians want to experience the great outdoors. We're outdoor-loving people. We realise that it's got to be done in a controlled, sustained, safe manner, but that doesn't mean you can lock us out. Actually, when you see how a lot of native national parks, state forests are actually looked after, and use the word stewardship.
Yep.
A lot of it's pretty rat shit.
It is.
As a lot of farmers, we don't like living next to state forests or national parks because they don't maintain their fire trails. They're full of weeds. They're full of pigs. They're full of wild dogs. And if there's a fire, it usually starts in there and they burn you out. Where on a farm, you've got to maintain it, mate. We want to leave our land in a good position. It's where we make money. Yeah. Why would we... And we've been labelled as environmental vandals by some people that don't like us. We want to look after the land, but we don't want to live next to a national park that's not being maintained, that doesn't get cool burns through it, that they leave the fuel load to build up to a level where when you have a fire, it's a massive bushfire that kills everything and scorches the ground.
Yeah.
And then they talk about the issues or the impacts of allowing people to enjoy four-wheel driving through there.
Exactly, and that brings me back to that whole statewide, access that we were talking about to, with the rego checks. It's like put some gates on it. Like don't lock it, but by all means manage it.
Yeah, manage it.
Because at the moment it's almost like the generic public. A portion of everybody's tax dollars are going towards whatever they're going to do with all that land, right? So why not have it funded by the people that are going to use it?
Yeah.
And not be, I wouldn't even imagine what the cost of how big's Queensland? What's 30% of Queensland? Like that's got to be 21% of the land. Hang on, what have we got here?
I was just working out currently what national parks currently has. So
Australia's National Reserve System, including national parks, covers 22.1% of the land mass, encompassing 169.9 million hectares.
Yeah, so they've still got just under 8% to acquire. But then I was just looking at this for Queensland as it's looking at us more.
Yep.
And they're saying we're approximately only at 8.38% of the state's total land area. So we've got a lot in Queensland to lose.
A lot more buying up.
Well, yes, but that's all. That will all come from privately owned stuff. The state will buy that back.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there's some farmers out there going to probably do all right out of some of the deals, at least I would hope. But still, so we're at 8.3%. So call it not. So there's 22% left still to do.
Yep.
That's a lot of land.
That is a lot of land, but wouldn't you at least go, okay, if their goal is to lock it anyway, lock it, but manage it by way of the community that want to use it.
Should have more of a say in its management.
More of a say in its management, fund the management of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, again, whether it's you know, the concept of having to pay for it is a you know, I've heard very good arguments for both sides of paying for it and not paying for it. But let's say it's pay something or you don't get to use it. So the choice then is, well, we'll pay something. But if you've got, pick a number, 50,000 people in Queensland.
Yep.
Bust out a calculator real quick because this is going to start hurting my head. If you've got 50,000 people in Queensland that want access to those types of areas and they pay, I don't know, $300 a year. Well, that's pretty easy. It's 150,000. But that's 150,000 that could go towards, I don't know, cameras on gates that just like at your is that right? 150,000? 50,000 times, no, 50,000 times 300. That's 1.5 million.
Yep.
So that's 1.5 million that could go towards cameras on gates that are like the shopping centre that read your rego. You've paid your $300 anywhere in Queensland you can get in. Surely that's got to be
15.
Hey, 15 million, is it?
It's a lot of dollars.
That's a chunk of cash for cameras and gates. And if it's not like Pauline Ance was talking about that roundabout that she initially got involved with at Ipswich, they were like, oh, this roundabout's going to cost $300,000. And she was like, fuck off, it is. You know, and it ended up being like 150 or whatever.
Yeah.
If it's managed, and if I've got this right, at least in part by a body that Queensland has to represent the off-roaders, that's part of what you guys are trying to put together.
Yeah.
So that we have a voice and we go, right, well, 15 million, we can do, you know, I mean, I'm a sheet metal guy. I can take a $15 sheet of steel and turn it into something worth $500. So you give me 15 million to play with, we'll make something work. And it might not be perfect, but it's like, hey guys, $300 for the year, wherever you want to go in Queensland, we've now got X amount of areas to deal with. And all you got to do is pay $300 for the year, and it's going to take a photo so that the system knows that you've been in there. And if something goes wrong, you know, we've got a handful of people that we can talk to.
Yep.
It's way better than locking up the country or locking up the state.
Yeah.
And it's generating money to
Manage it.
Yep. Like 15 million. Like that's, and I'm just talking, I mean, 50,000. There's probably a lot more because otherwise places like TJM and ARB and stuff like that, you know, they'd go broke.
Yep.
But at a quick little ballpark of $300 for a year, 50,000 people is $15 million. Like that's got to go towards helping it and fund it. And you would think that all the people that are in Queensland that are paying tax would want to get involved because they're like, well, let's agree to this because that means they're funding it, which means we don't have to pay for it because, you know, there's a handful of people that don't want to do that for recreation.
Yep.
So they're like, well, they're funding their own thing. Have at it. That means we're not paying for it.
Yep.
That just makes so much sense.
It's got to be. You're right, and you hit the nail on the head. It's got to get, the people have got to get closer to the decision.
Yes.
And be more involved in the decision. Decisions, and I guess that's what some of the parties, including the Libertarians, want to do is make the decisions of government as close to the people as possible. And so what would be wrong for four-wheel drive groups to actually be more involved in the management of areas, whether they pay for it or physically help do it, to be able to provide, because it's not being done now at a state level, mate. So there's better management of state land and national parks. So it's a positive contribution. Because, we don't want to get locked out, mate. That is bad for the environment, and it's actually bad for our culture and our society where, like I keep saying, we're outdoor people. We don't want to all be locked down into a central place like it seems they want us to.
Yeah.
We want to be able to climb mountains. We want to be able to go to Mount Warning. We want to be able to go to Lake Eyre. I just read today, Kakadu Park, like they're closing a lot of those areas.
Yeah.
We understand that there's cultural sites that you don't want a heap of people trampling over,
Yeah.
but there's got to be give and take. That you can't and we're one country, aren't we?
That's the idea.
I've always said, and like it really pees me, separatists who want to divide Australia into, you're this colour, you're that colour, you're from that back, that identity politics should be thrown out the door.
I agree.
And I think separatists are going to be on the wrong side of history, mate.
Yeah.
We are one nation under one flag, and we should look at the future and not try and divide us. And I think that's all part of being locked out. And like I think Pauline Hanson mentioned it, what's happening out at Tabir, where Michael, the Tabir publican, they've lost 95% of their town. That was given to an Aborigine corporation in Brisbane, and they never even got consulted. So
wow.
So that you imagine you had nearly 600 acres out the back of the pub in Tabir. It's got about 20 houses, and they used to go down to that reserve, run their horses in it, pay the council for it.
Yeah.
To run their horses in, have fishing comps, pony clubs, showgrounds. Well, now that's just been taken from them. And now they've got to get permission from an Aborigine corporation based in Brisbane who don't even live there. And you know what? That's happening in 14 other places. And I'll say this on this program now because all this is confidential.
Right.
But it's been said in Parliament. Steve Andrews brought it to attention before he was no longer the member of Morani. There's 14 other towns where this secret land transfer is happening. So we don't get to find out about it. And so it's happening on Inskip Point.
Really?
It's happened on Fraser Island.
Yeah, we heard about Fraser.
Yep. And so it's happening in Roma, in Miles, in a heap of other towns where under it's called the Aborigine Land Act, so it's state legislation. An Aborigine corporation can apply for a land transfer of land that's unallocated state land or land under reserve of council, like was the thing at Tabir.
Yeah.
And it is provided to that Aborigine corporation as Aborigine freehold land. So it's transferred to them. They can't sell it,
Right.
but they can lease it out, build stuff on it, stuff like that. They can do a lot. They can make money off it.
Right.
But we don't, like, say, take Tabir for it. No one had input into that decision. It was like they've used it. They've got a connection for over 100 years with it. And that Indigenous group only had a connection for 60 years. So
Right.
even the Indigenous people from that area, one of the fellows I know from the Gamilaroi tribe, his mother was born on the banks of that creek, and she's not allowed in there anymore. So there's even wrongs there.
Wow.
And that is why I agree with some other parties. I know the Libertarians want a full audit of the Aborigine industry because, you know what, the best thing for economic development for Indigenous people is owning your own block of land, isn't it? That's how private property rights are key, aren't they? You know, we own houses and property. That's how you make a buck. You buy and sell it. That's how you can make a profit.
Yeah.
Get money. Individual Aborigines and a lot of these native titleists, they can't own land. It's collective. It's owned by the Land Council.
Wow.
So, closing the gap for Aborigines, well, if they can't own their own house, they can't own their own land to have a business on, what are they going to do?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Look, I had a conversation with a bloke who was a customer actually down here. It was totally, we were just literally having a chat, chin wagging away, and he passed a comment on something that was said during Pauline's episode. He was loves the show, and it was like, I just wanted you to know, because he had his heritage was Aboriginal and Australian. I think there was a couple other that he said in there.
Yep.
I can't remember the specifics, so but he had Aboriginal blood. Mm-hmm. And we were standing there talking for probably an hour and a half. His job is actually in government, though. So what he does to get paid, and he's like, because I said to him, I'm like, we need to get you on. Like, this is,
yeah.
Because he was explaining to me, like, kippering. Like, that's actually, and I haven't fact-checked any of this because it's like, I took it at face value. But apparently kippering, and I think it was Ningi, was like Ningi tribe or something like that. And these are the Aboriginal names for those areas. Like, he was taking me through so much of this stuff, and his point of view on a lot of the stuff that was happening in government and these land deals that were happening and stuff like that. He's like, mate, for the most part, actual Aboriginal people are not the ones pushing this shit.
That's right.
He goes, there's upper crust corporations that have done all these deals.
Yep.
He's like, it's really hard. It's like when an African American says certain words, it's okay, but the rest of us can't say it, and fully respect all that.
Yep.
But there was words that he was using during that when he's like, when we, what did he call them? Like, full bloods and stuff like that. He's like, mate, the elders, they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They get on with their day. They do what they do. This government-based stuff. He's like, half the people that are in there, I've never seen them at a tribal kind of meeting and speaking with people that are old enough to have been there for some of the stuff, that everybody talks about these days.
Yep.
They're just agenda driven, and he's like, oh, we respect our heritage, and he's like, but he was talking about some of the stuff like that is being pushed into the media these days. He's like, mate, in all honesty, some of it's fucking offensive.
Yeah.
He goes, and I'm talking about it on behalf of someone that identifies as an Aboriginal blood. I have history, I have heritage.
Yep.
My family's from XYZ. He goes, but I can't come on your show and talk about that. Like, there's a big issue with working for the government and this and that.
Because he's a public servant.
Yeah. He's like, so I can't, be a face for any of that. But he's like, I'm telling you, in a private conversation away from a camera, for the most part of it, a lot of the stuff they're pushing, a lot of the narrative they're pushing, we find offensive. And I'm like, that's really refreshing to hear.
Yeah.
And someone posted something on one of the shorts that we put up, like, why don't you racist pricks get a bloody, someone on there that's actually knows what they're talking about. And I didn't reply to it then, and I won't use his name now, but it's like, the thing that I've put out there on multiple different occasions is I would love an elder. I would love, not a political person, an actual elder, someone who is part of that community, to come down and share an afternoon and have a chat and actually get some points across. Because I think it's like that land and other parts of it have become this, it's almost like its own business machine.
Its own industry.
Its own industry. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if the goal is for Australians to be Australians and equal opportunity, not outcome.
Yep.
But equal opportunity, equal support, equal access, then stop fucking separating it.
Yeah. That's right.
What happened was shit.
Division.
Yeah. What happened in the past was shit, no doubt.
Yeah.
But you know what? I didn't do it.
No.
And guys that I went to school with weren't around to have it happen to them.
Yep.
And it's like, at some point we've got to go, all right, well, are we fucking Australians or not?
Yeah, that's
because
right.
if we're not, draw a line in the sand somewhere and let's split.
Yeah.
But not this patch here, patch there, and all the arguments and shit that goes with it.
Yeah.
We're either fucking Australian or we're not.
Yeah.
It starts to fucking work me up too, especially when I hear that type of comment from somebody who there's no question that he's got Aboriginal blood in him.
He's frustrated.
Yeah, and he's like, mate, honestly, half the shit's fucking offensive.
Yep.
And it's like, he said the same thing. He goes, mate, I'm an Aussie. You're an Aussie. Like, we're getting sick of this shit too.
Yeah.
And it's like, God, I want someone to come on and have a conversation with me about that topic, to clear the air, because I think there was an interview on one of the news stations about, there's a lady in politics who was representing, it was a city up north somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the lady's name, but she was speaking on behalf of the Aboriginal community in this town.
Yep.
And someone that might have been a YouTube channel guy, but he went around and said, do you know who this person is? And, has she ever been up here? And blah, blah, blah. And everyone was like, either, I've no idea who that is, or, yeah, I know her. I wish she'd shut up. No, she's never been here. And it's like this whole machine thing that's all it's doing is creating more divide.
More divide and not really fixing the problem.
No, if anything, making it worse.
Yeah, exactly. So with that situation out at Tabira and that, we had a lot of the local Indigenous people, the Gamilaroi, come and protest with us because they thought it was wrong too. And they thought that the decision to give that land to an Indigenous corporation that really they believed wasn't even from that area was the wrong thing. So you've got people calling that out, and that's happening everywhere.
Right.
And I
14,
think
you said? 14
other towns, mate. And that's just with the state-based Aborigine Land Act. Remember, we've got native title, which is federal legislation. That's where you've got all these land claims, which I think, off the top of my head, I think there's 54% of Australia that's under land claim now. That's successful. And I think, and there's two different types of land claims. There's exclusive, where you don't have access. You've got to get permission. And then there's non-exclusive, where, you can still go on it, you can still enjoy it, which is cool.
Yeah.
But I think there's, off the top of my head, we could Google it, I think there's 16%. It's hard to find out because a lot of it's confidential, where you can't access it.
Right.
Unless you get their permission or pay.
Okay.
So, and it's happening around here. Look at Redlands. They've got that native title claim over there, and there's hundreds of different lots where they've still got to prove that native title's been extinguished. And I think one of those, there's stuff like parks. There's even the council chambers, off the top of my head, that they've still got to prove that native title doesn't exist.
Yeah, right.
So it's, that whole industry needs a review to make sure that the $40 billion that taxpayers are putting in to that industry, that we're getting the best outcomes to help Indigenous people.
And I think that's the biggest thing too, is it's like, is what's being spent actually helping anyone other than the upper crust?
The corporations.
Lining their pockets with, bonuses and whatnot else.
Back to those corporations again, mate.
It is. Yeah. It's this fucking wheel that just keeps feeding the top.
Yep, definitely. So it's a big issue. I know.
What do you guys face on a sort of day-to-day basis, like other than your 77 bits of paper that, probably should be about 4.
Yep.
What to feed them, land management, how old they've got to be to do something, and don't beat them with a stick. Like, it should be pretty fucking simple. Like,
it is. Like, I guess farmers are quite resilient. And like Australia has got weather that it's boom and bust.
Yeah.
And, we're quite, we're used to that. We're some of the best producers in the world, Australia, the best farmers in the world. We have a lot of the best beef genetics in the world. That's why a lot of people ask for our expertise. So it really, in a lot of rural and regional areas of Queensland, that it's our infrastructure, it's our roads, it's our bridges, are falling to bits.
Yeah.
We just don't get the services, but we produce a lot of the exports and the wealth. Hospitals, childcare centres. Look, there's, like, say, I'm out from South Burnett area. It's not that far from here.
No.
And, you know, council goes to put on staff but can't keep them there because there's no houses. There's literally no houses. There's no childcare centres. I've got to wait at Wandai to get into the doctor. If I want to go and see the doctor at Wandai, which is 26 k's away, I've got to wait 6 weeks. And then
What?
Yeah. I've got to go to Gympie to see the doctor, nearly 2 hours away from me, so I can get in. Yeah, there's just no doctors, mate. And so what you're finding, they are hollowing out rural and regional Australia with a lack of services, mate, and a lack of infrastructure. So when we see... the one thing they aren't hollowing out is they're building all these solar farms and wind farms all over the place. And guess who owns a lot of that country now? Our mates from China.
Yeah.
So they own the land and they own the physical asset, the solar panels on that land, and we pay them subsidies to run it.
Wait, so we sell the land. Okay.
So they come and buy the land off a landowner, and you can't. Some people say and I've copped it sweet, you know, over the last 12 months because I believe people should be able to buy and sell land, make it a profit off the land, as long as they stick within the rules. But there's nothing wrong with that. So, but then people say, "Oh, Jim, but you're saying people shouldn't sell out to solar or wind developments," and I'm saying, well, that's. You know, and they're offered a lot of money. Some landowners get up to $40,000 per turbine and per year. And so you just imagine if a landholder has, say, 6 or 7 turbines on their place per year.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of money. But it's the around that area. If you're around like a solar or wind, well, you might get the noise. You might get the loss of property value, the loss of scenic view. It decreases the value of your place. So there's a lot of angst in communities right across Australia which are getting steamrolled, mate. People don't realise that this is happening out there, that people are just getting steamrolled by these foreign renewable energy companies who don't have to play by the rules.
Yeah.
They go and see one farmer, they pay him big money, they build there, but that farmer then is not allowed to tell anyone how much he's getting or that he's signed off on a wind development or a solar development. And then that fractures the community because you might have a farmer here and there getting paid, but then all these communities and farms in here just cop the damage.
Yeah.
Or to their roads and their loss of property value. And this is what else is happening. Around these places, if you live next to I call them solar factories, mate, but they're farms. I hate a farm's where you produce food, not...
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So they can't get the level of insurance. So if I'm out there and I'm welding up a gate, my bull's bent or something, and it sparks a fire and I live next to a solar factory and it burns out a solar factory worth $100 million, and usually my public liability is only $20 million, guess where they're coming for the other $80 million?
Really?
So I can't get enough insurance to cover myself. See, insurance, like if I tried to get insurance for $100 million, some of these facilities worth $500 million. And you might just have to live next to it. You could live 4 or 5 k's away. You start the fire, even if it burns them out, they're going to come and see you.
Yeah, right.
So people can't get insurance. And they ask the government, this has been in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, that's a commercial thing.
Yeah, they're pretty easy to palm it off.
Yeah, so everyone's really worried about that because a lot of areas, a lot of research has been done by non-government institutions, and they're saying up to 180 million hectares of Australia is going to be covered in solar factories, wind factories, and transmission lines.
Knowing that it's not sustainable and it's at best 30%, and we don't know what to do with it when we're done.
Yep.
They're still pushing towards that.
They are, because we've signed off on the Paris Climate Change Agreement, which says that we must have 43% reduction in emissions from 2005 levels. So that Paris Climate Change Agreement that's the thing that's driving the cost of electricity up.
But isn't nuclear like the most clean?
Nuclear is the most clean, That's right, and that's why, say if you're a climate change believer and human-induced climate change, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that's your belief. Why wouldn't you want to go nuclear when it's got a high capacity factor above 90%, a very small footprint,
Yeah.
and lasts over 100 years, modern nuclear facilities,
Yeah.
and you don't have to run transmission lines everywhere. Power becomes cheaper because it's available all the time.
Yeah.
And it produces so much power. And you know what it produces? Industrial heat. So around these nuclear power plants, you can have industrial facilities that want, industrial heats. Like you can do a lot of processes with industrial heat.
Absolutely.
And so I'm just looking at the states, where they have transitioned in the states from coal to nuclear, 75% of the jobs available in a coal-fired power station can transition straight over to a nuclear facility, and they're higher paying jobs.
It's like blowing my mind why this is not a higher priority in the news and
That's
educating
right.
people.
Well, people focus on the waste, and actually nuclear power has less, there's been less accidents with nuclear power that has caused the death of people than solar.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's also probably because every man and his dog 10 years ago was throwing solar panels on the roof because it was rebates everywhere, and you do a 5-minute course online and you got a certificate.
And remember, we've got the biggest uranium reserves in the world, Australia. We have got the biggest uranium reserves. We've got some of the biggest coal reserves, and we've got some of the biggest gas reserves. But we've got some of the dearest power. We're importing gas into Australia because we export too much and we haven't got enough for domestic supplies. Work that one out.
Wait, what? So we've got the most gas.
One of the most gas, yep.
We've got
gas rich, mate.
Well, I know I am after a few beers. But we've got the most gas.
Yep.
Well, not the most. We've got a lot of gas to the point that we can export.
Massive. 80% of it goes out of here.
But we export.
But we import gas because we haven't got enough to use domestically.
Is that? Are we exporting it because from when it comes out of the ground, there's got to be some sort of process done that we can't do here to make it usable?
No.
This is idiotic. This is like the more you know, the worse it gets.
Yeah. Yeah, we are heading towards an energy cliff because we're closing down our coal-fired power stations. All the coal-fired power stations, the bulk of them will come offline in 10 years. And then we're expected to survive on renewable only with some gas peakers. So when coal goes, we lose the base load. So, a lot of politicians saying, well, coal's very unreliable. It was said in the news the other day. Coal-fired power stations, they haven't been giving them the upkeep they need because they know government policy wants to close them down. So they're not going to spend any more. They want to spend minimal money on them because they know they're going to be not of use. We need to refurbish those coal-fired power stations. This is what we need to do to energy straight away. Get rid of renewable subsidies, no bans, no subsidies, lift the nuclear prohibition so we can at least get private companies to say, well, this is how much it's going to cost. We're keen to go into it.
Yeah.
Let's go. Keep our coal, refurbish them if we have to, and bring more gas online, and our power prices would go down dramatically, mate. And we'd save $16 billion straight up
In subsidies.
and we wouldn't be blowing the tops off mountains. We wouldn't be smothering all our farmlands.
We wouldn't be killing bloody nature for kilometres around.
That's right. We wouldn't be driving people to suicide.
And the waste at the end of it is still more manageable than
It is.
all the batteries and
France, I think you could even Google it. France uses something like 90% of its waste is fed back through its own reactors for fuel. Again.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
That's 90% is like about as close to a perpetual motion fucking machine as you can
As
get.
you can get, that's right. Yep.
This is...
It's the fear-mongering about nuclear. Nuclear will come. I think there's 30 nuclear countries and another 50 that want to get on board. Bangladesh is further down the nuclear pipeline than we are. The Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia are all looking at going nuclear.
Do you think that there's a stigma around it based on just the the issues that were happening when it was an early-ish technology?
Definitely.
Okay. So it's just educating people.
It is. And see, there's a lot of corporations that are making a lot of money off renewables, mate.
For sure.
All the subsidies.
Yeah.
The guarantee. Remember, there's a thing called the Capacity Investment Scheme created by this government where they actually guarantee an income, plus the subsidies, for renewable developers that they'll get. So if the power price, if they don't make as much money out of thought they were going to make, well, we guarantee them a floor price. So it's not just the subsidies over here. There's this capacity investment scheme as well.
And knowing that we're going into that the best they're going to do is 30% anyway.
Yep.
It's like almost like a guaranteed blank check.
It's money for jam. And remember, a lot of those corporations have a lot of lobbyists that go and see parliamentarians in federal parliament.
So bringing that full circle back to how do we get power off these two main juggernauts? The first step, I'm guessing, is to get the numbers so that they have to put whatever it is through the smaller group.
That's right. They need the smaller group to make decisions.
But then how does that smaller group become a viable runner in an election?
Well, we've got 18%
Yep.
here in Queensland. I think New South Wales has got 12.
Yep.
Off the top of my head, don't quote me. I think Victoria's about 10, 12 itself as well. So just in those three areas.
Yep.
The first step we've got to do is get more people into the Senate, the upper house,
Yes.
because that's where they're like the checkers. They look at all the legislation coming through. Nah, we don't like that, or ask questions about it. So they're like a judge, basically, aren't they? The senators. So they're the house of review.
Right.
And so we need more senators in there. That's the first step, to get more senators in there, because you look at the Greens and Labor and they've got the bulk. When Labor has to rely on, Greens have got 12 senators in there to help Labor out.
In the upper house.
In the upper house.
Right.
Where, what are the freedom senators we've got at the moment? Malcolm Roberts, Senator Rennick. Hopefully I want to be one.
Yeah.
If we get through, we need more. So we need...
This is all for lower house, though.
No, all the upper house.
Oh, it is for upper house still, right.
So I'm running for the Senate, which covers the whole state.
Right.
We've got 12 senators in Queensland.
Mm-hmm.
Every 3 years, 6 come up. So you get this. So this next federal election, in the next 6 or so weeks, you're going to have a chance to vote on 6 senators for Queensland. Usually 2 go to LNP. Usually 1 goes to Labor, 1 to Greens, and then there's 2 up for grabs.
Okay.
So we need to make sure we have at least 2, maybe 3, take one off the Greens here, the same in Queensland, the same in Victoria, so we can build up the numbers where these parties need to come to us. So we can say, well, legislation won't get through unless we let it get through. We can assess it and say we need these changes to it to start tinkering with it.
Yeah.
But that's where we need to go first. And then we need to have more lower house people as well.
Which is more the suburb sort of...
Yeah, so, like lower house seats in the federal parliament usually cover, off the top of my head, around 100,000 people. So they're broken up, I think, off the top of my head, 28 different electorates, lower house electorates for the federal parliament in Queensland.
Right.
I think so, 28, 32.
That's right.
Yep. So it's the Senate first. So we need to form that coalition and to get as many freedom fighters senators in there so we can start to grow this machine here.
Yeah.
And so we need people from your sectors to help that happen. And we need to put pressure on those parties to form an alliance as well. So it's not going to happen totally this election, but we can learn from it and get ready for the next one, because it's only 3 years. And look at the state and local elections as well.
And so so let's say you call it, I don't know, the Wild Party. I don't know.
Yeah, wild side. Yeah.
But at what point can someone from that party run and potentially get the top job? Like how does that then go from
A couple of election cycles if we do it right.
It's literally just a cycle to build up that momentum.
Yep,
Yeah, okay.
definitely.
Right.
Yep, that could happen if we build up and we get enough momentum.
Yeah.
And if enough people are frustrated with what's happening now on the downward spiral and want to look at what they're leaving for our kids
Yeah.
and are sick of giving them the government money and the bureaucrats money, come to this side.
But we still don't have. It's like even if that happens and we get somebody in there that is not just completely indoctrinated and brought up with and politically career only driven mindset, the prime minister still has limitations as to what they can like, because the president's pretty well. I mean, I know it's still prime minister and president, they're still the leader of the country or whatever, but the president in America has a lot more kind of power to go, right, that whole thing that you're doing, fuck off.
Yeah.
So the prime minister still has limitations, but to be able to call to some sort of action with all the bureaucracy and this ridiculous amount of new jobs and all this legislation and all this just verbal gymnastic rubbish, to start seeing some actual action in stripping some of this shit back, because that's effectively what Australia is where we're simplified. Like Aussies are like, we like our work, we like our play, we like some security, but we don't want to be fucking micromanaged.
No, we don't, and we are at the moment.
Yeah, we are. And it's like, so
It's a good way to put it.
what is that? What has to happen to start seeing some of this actually go, you know what, that's not really in Australia's best interest. Might be in the upper crust in their pocket and whatever else. But this isn't really in Australia's best interest.
Yep.
Let's put that whole thing, because if someone can't walk in the job like what Trump did, if we have to be a little bit more, play within the rules, go, okay, I can't walk in as the new prime minister and go, I want it gone, but you might be able to walk in and go, this is shit, put it to a vote, and start letting the Australian people actually have our say back.
That's right. Yep.
Right, okay.
Well, the one thing that will make the major parties react the quickest, and because we want to change them as well, don't we? Like we want to try and say bring them back to the centre instead of at either end. Well, none of them. Well, the current party at the moment is probably far left or heading that way.
Yeah.
And the Greens are heading that way as well. They are. We want to bring them back to the centre because there's good Labor people, old Labor that used to care about the workers. The unions used to focus on the welfare of the workers. They were great, mate.
Yeah.
The same for Dutton and his crew. They've gone to the left as well. We want to push them back to the centre.
Yeah.
The centre where it's more balanced, and we look at social issues, but we look at free enterprise as well, growing business, growing Australia, freedom, not restricting our voice. The way to get them to react as we build this machine over here as well is if they'll react if they see people leaving their party and voting over here. I go, well, we better start doing, to try and get these people back. That's the quickest way. If they see votes leaving and their bleeding voter base, they'll react really quick.
I think one of the things to do then in that regard would be to start focusing some attention on stuff like your touring and four-wheel drive community.
Yep.
Especially because the touring and four-wheel drive community, if you grab the top 20 influencers in Australia, they'll have a following that would just dwarf any of the parties.
Yeah, right.
It just
Good
will.
idea.
Like you got a handful of people like, I mean, Ruthie's a big advocate for it. He's, for forever been about, open access to forestries, parks, all that.
Yep.
There would be maybe not some of the juggernaut influencers, because some of those guys are very corporate in their decision making.
Yep.
And there's probably some sponsors involved that would be like, if we see you as a part of this, even Ruthie said it. He had a deal put together to put a show together with, I'm pretty sure it was a caravan company, and he'd said something about, Unlock Australia, free camping, and they were, if you're going to take that attitude and you're going to voice that publicly, we're out.
It's against the main narrative.
That's right. So some of your upper crust influencers may be a little harder to get to have a voice on it.
Yep.
But there would still be a handful that would have in the millions of followers that would be a pretty good asset, I would think, to lean on.
Definitely.
And
that's part of the alliance. What you're talking about there, Ben, is what we need to do to build that alliance, because success breeds success too. And those corporate influencers, if they see people starting to go and support this and millions of people, they'll go, no, I support it too.
Yeah, so they won't, and it's corporate. So they might not go publicly, we don't support what these guys are doing. What they'll do is shut up and see what happens.
Yeah.
Because
That's
it's like it's like anything. Nobody wants to look like an idiot.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm quite happy to look like one. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's like I was the class clown at school. I'm quite used to being called out. But look, I think that, there's, and I'm definitely not knocking the way anybody, does anything in what you're trying to do, but there is like how old are you?
54.
54. All right. So what are we, 44 this year?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 10 years young, decade younger.
Yep.
You know what? I've got a bit of an understanding as to how to use some of the tools that are out there now. You know what? The decade younger than us make me look like an antique.
Yeah.
So I think that there is some fresh blood out there of influencers and enthusiasts in the industry, and you give them something to sink their teeth in, like Unlock Australia.
Yep.
Along with some of the originals, like Ruthie, Gleno, all the boys that I would be pretty sure would get on board with it.
Yep.
Not that I'm speaking for them, but I think there is a wealth of exposure there that I think you would have a lot of success. Maybe not necessarily using the word attaching yourself to it, but
That could help.
look, the platforms that some of these guys have got are just nuts.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
you don't have to rely on mainstream media then, mate, because mainstream media aren't going to talk about this.
No, and you still get to have the fun. You get to play, and I've noticed this. I've stirred the shit a few times with clickbait and what Channel 7 does and all that, but you get to play that game, that clickbait game.
Yeah.
I've put shorts out there, but like when the mainstream media does it, it's to get the click and to get you to read the thing, and then they get the advertising and all the bullshit from it.
Yep.
I'll put something out there, and it's like, because I'm trying to direct people to go and watch the whole episode.
Yeah.
It might be something that's a bit like, oh, geez, that's a bit, how you doing? But it's with the goal to get them to go and hear the whole story.
Yes.
But you sit down and say to somebody, like Pauline Hanson's was a great one. You sit down and go and listen to Pauline Hanson for 2 hours. There is a buttload of people that are going to go, fuck off, right?
Yep.
But you put some stuff out there that is a little bit kind of make your ears prick up a bit and go, if you want to hear the whole story, it's over here. Mm-hmm. You'll get more people to go and listen.
Yep.
And I've had some messages. I mean, some of the people, they won't. They'll just react to that one bit, fine. But they would have reacted to her that way anyway because that's what they think.
That's exactly right.
But I have had a lot of people go, that was not what I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
So making use of the tools that are out there now, because I think you're probably still going to go out and kiss some babies.
Of course.
But, I think making use of what's available and the instantaneous reach.
Yep.
It's you got a lot out there that I think, especially with what you guys are trying to do and having that platform and those types of people there that want the parks and the forest and the trails and everything to stay open.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm harping on about it, but you know what? I think it'd be worth it.
Because and it's great you are talking like that, because what we're looking at is the infrastructure to help feed into that, those feedback loops, those community grassroots, hey, and the influences of that.
Yeah.
That's what we need, mate.
Yeah.
Because you go to the corporate world and the corporate media, they don't want to talk about this, what you and I have talked about today.
No, they don't. Tony said the same thing. He had a thing up about, like, you know, the locked gates, and he was like, everything was kicking along fine, and then all of a sudden the views went,
yeah.
And with that, all the bullshit, he was like, mate, it was like it got shared to some, you know, green, you know, anarchy kind of what. He was like, mate, we started getting called this name, that name, whatever else. It's like, they're out there. And there's probably bots and other
heaps of them
bullshit as well. But the bots don't vote. And the more engagement it is, the more the algorithm pushes it, and the more people will see it.
That's right.
So I think that's definitely worth at least having a look at. And I'd love to pull on your ear afterwards at some point about what it is that we could do, because at the moment we've got a lot of people saying the same thing, but none of us really know, and I'm just talking about the four-wheel drive side, none of us really know what to do next, because, you know, a lot of us are just guys that enjoy four-wheel driving. We're not educated in that area.
Yep.
You know, we might put a post up and go, all right, if you want to keep the gates open, rock up at this joint at this time.
But you know the issues, Ben. You know the issues that the people that you talk to and do business with. And and that's powerful.
Absolutely.
Hey,
The
and
industry.
that's what we need, yeah.
Yeah, the industry, people like me and a lot bigger companies than me.
Yeah.
And the customers that we serve and the people that we meet on the tracks and the guys that watch the shows. It's not any, I don't even know what the word I would use. We're not any kind of special breed. We love the country. We love getting out there. We love our trucks.
Yeah.
And it's like,
you're grassroots, mate.
Yeah.
That's what grassroots communities are.
Exactly. But
they're not corporatised.
But a lot of us don't know how to create change.
Yeah.
We could create a meet where we all go and talk and go, yeah, and then we'll all leave and go, what the fuck did we achieve? Because we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do next.
Well, I think it's what we're proposing at a political level with this new, like, I don't know what we're going to call it. Well, let's call it alliance for now.
Yeah.
That's where we need to come together and meet and talk. And
you've just done something like that, didn't you, on Saturday or whatever? You had a big thing.
Yeah. Oh, man, it was so hot. I can put up with a bit of hot weather, but, mate, it was humid as. But, look, we had a pretty good roll-up.
Yep.
And, 12 groups got together.
Okay.
And all had different issues, but we put our issues aside and for the common good. And we said, well, what we don't want out of this next federal election is Greens holding the balance of power with, say, Labor.
Yep.
Because you think you're locked out now, it's going to go on steroids, mate.
Yeah.
And so we just said, we're coming together to help spread the message of putting the Greens last. And what's that created, and it's interesting, is a lot of harmony where people are now helping each other with a heap of other different stuff. Well, I know how to do that. I've known this person over here, and it's growing. So what you've just suggested over here with this alliance across these four-wheel drive sectors, that's what we've got to do, mate, and we've got to join that with that and feed it into this political alliance to grow the machine. We are building it, and it's the architecture that you're talking about that gives people, well, we don't know how we can get it together down here, but if we match it with you guys here, then we can take it forward, and that would allow grassroots connectivity and interaction between you guys and the people that are going to represent you.
Yeah.
And that's what's not happening now with the big parties.
No, absolutely not.
They're not grassroots. They haven't got a grassroots game, mate. They don't care about the grassroots. We're an annoyance.
Yeah, it's the ivory tower bullshit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, I think it's an exciting... Well, we need to do it, don't we? I'm with you.
We've got to do something.
Yeah, stick with my cows, do a bit of consultancy, drive a tractor, excavator.
Yeah.
But no, I can just see the direction of our country's going in, and it's spiralling down when it should be... We should have really cheap power. We should have access to a lot of areas. We should have, look at the Australian continent, it is massive. There's a heap of good places to go. We've got beautiful beaches. Let's get our country back and let's start putting Aussies first.
I love that.
No, totally what we've got to do.
Maybe that could be the name.
Aussies first.
Aussies first.
Yeah, I'd like it.
Mate, God, we could keep going.
It's
I'm not the bloody the mouse isn't going to get off this wheel for fucking hours now.
We can see it. Like you can, I can see that you're starting to see what we're looking at here now, and I think that's the direction we've got to go. So I hope like anyone that's watching that can help and feed in. We've got to work together and collaborate. We won't agree on everything, and people won't agree with everything that you and I have said, but that's okay. No. But we can agree that we love our country.
Yeah.
We're sick of the division, and we want to start putting Australia first. So we've got a legacy to give our kids, that we can defend ourselves, that we're not paying higher taxes, and we've got freedom of thought and speech and what kind of car we can drive.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Absolutely to absolutely everything you just said.
That's what I want. That's who I am, and that's who a lot of other people politically that I align myself with that are in different parties, which is cool. You mightn't like the Libertarians. Well, that's okay. Go to another smaller party because we all need to form together into something that's going to take this forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think I love what you guys are trying to do. I think you got to come up with a cool name though. You got to come up with something that makes people go, yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, well,
now I feel like a douchebag because the purple polka dot party.
Oh, the purple pingers in Victoria.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, they're socialists.
Get fucked. Oh, wow. Okay. Shout out to the purple pingers. Good Lord, the purple pingers. That sounds like a bad 60s acid trip.
Yeah, they're communists.
Oh, well, okay. Well, fuck them. Don't assassinate me. Look, I love what you're doing. I think it's really cool. I love that you just went, fuck it, we got to do something, and you put your hand up and are doing it. And if there's anything we can do from our point in the game, as far as the land, and access to it, where I don't think anybody that I've ever had a conversation with is got any dramas with privately owned land. It's like if you own it, then you don't want people on it. Fine, but state and forestries and fire trails and all the other stuff. It's like
that's our land, mate.
Absolutely, and stop fucking giving it away or selling it or whatever. What is this?
Oh yeah, that's Property Rights Australia that I'm part of. So they're all about, and that's our catch cry: stand your ground.
Nice.
Oh.
Well,
thanks for bringing that up.
There you go. He's onto it. He has his moments. But yeah, no, look, you get that 4 or 5 fundamental, like just rock solid foundation things that you can get everybody to agree on.
Those principles and values.
Yeah, I think you'll do well, and we got to do something because at the moment, like I said, if it's getting to a point that I'm noticing it, it's getting bad.
Yep, so, definitely. It's everywhere.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to hit on before we bail? And
mate, just thanks for bringing me along. And look, you'll see my face out there around the traps, hopefully. And check out the Libertarians, but check out all the freedom parties, not just the Libertarians, because we're all got the best of the country at heart.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
Let's work together.
Well, Jim, thank you very much for sharing an afternoon with us and a few beers. Yeah. It's been good. Pleasure to meet you.
You too.
We'll definitely see you out there.
No worries. Thanks,
awesome.
Ben.
Beauty. Bye, everybody.